Hey everybody, this is Story Dude. I want to welcome you to our channel where we're going to be discussing some of the hottest topics on the internet floating around today. So let's dive in and see what people are talking about. Am I the a-hole for telling a guy to move his crying baby out of a quiet enclosure at the zoo? Ah, I'm a 19-year-old male, and I visited the zoo today with my family, and we were checking out the koalas, who I was especially excited to see. You may not know this, but koalas apparently need over 18 hours of sleep a day to function, or else they can get quite unhealthy quite quickly. And so, any exhibit of them at a zoo will often come with an expectation that you maintain a certain level of silence while observing them. This zoo today was no exception. You are made to go through two gates, both of which have signage saying, "Please be quiet, keep the noise down, silence, please," etc. And then the door to the koala house itself has another sign, "Please keep noise levels to a minimum." With all these reminders, I figured people would get the memo, but as soon as we entered the enclosure, which was a small room indoors with a glass window looking into the koala pen, I spotted a couple in their early 30s with two young kids and a baby. I somewhat apprehensively tried to observe the koalas. They were so cute, and my little sister was happy to see them. But then, like clockwork, the baby starts crying. Hardly the baby's fault. It's a baby. They cry. So I gave the dad of the family the benefit of the doubt, thinking he'd either take the baby out or calm her down. A few moments pass, the baby gets more annoyed and cries louder. The koalas scurry away, hiding in their cubbyholes, and others wake up from their sleeping. I give the dad a look. I feel like everyone knows the look. We've either had someone give it to us or given it to someone else. I'm not sure I'd ever been on this end of it, but I definitely received some looks at times. Baby continues to cry. I, being a socially awkward autistic teenager, grapple with the idea that the dad might have missed my giving him the look, so I do the classic I shake my head and give a little sigh. No change. I throw another look his way, this time a little more firm, but I feel like I overdo it. My eyes are a little too intense, perhaps, because suddenly the dad is saying, in the voice of someone who's just gotten a lecture, "Well, all right, mate, it's just a baby," to which I reply with a gesture towards the sign, "Silence, please." "But it's a baby," he says. "Well, don't bring a baby in here," I reply in a whisper. My parents jump on me, thinking I'm out of line, and the couple and their kids give me the filthiest of looks and leave the enclosure, leaving me feeling very tense. What do we think? I feel this is a very common struggle in a public place where there aren't always members of staff to enforce the rules. We want to pick our battles, of course, but this family bringing their baby in spoiled my little sister's magical moment seeing a koala for the first time. Surely they shouldn't Surely they should have seen the signs and thought probably best not to bring little Charlie in. Or if they really wanted to see the koalas, the dad could have stayed outside with the baby and the mom and the kid could have gone in. Am I the a-hole? No, OP, you are not. It's very difficult to confront people in public, and I never do it because I'm terrified of social interactions. And actually, as a father, it's my like nightmare to put other people in the position where they'd want to tell me something. So like if my baby starts crying, I immediately retreat to wherever I can to avoid putting other people in the situation because it's just, the less we talk to each other in public, the better in my opinion. Because I find the whole thing quite anxiety inducing. So it sounds like you could have done a better job here confronting this person, but confronting is never easy. And I think you didn't do anything too overtly obnoxious. You gave him the look, and the look was not understood, and it's not your fault. Not the a-hole, OP. Not the a-hole, says our first commenter. And to those who saying it was not OP's place to enforce the quiet please signs, yes it was. The koalas cannot protect themselves. They depend on the humans to not deliberately hurt them by disturbing them with loud noise. And when some humans are dumb enough to not understand this, the smarter humans will have to tell them and make them stop. The zoo should put a member of the staff in this room to stop this kind of nonsense, but since there was none, OP did the right thing. Yeah, there is a certain amount of self-policing involved in public spaces, which is why I find them particularly terrifying. And yeah, I mean, It sounds like the OP gave the father enough time to get the baby out, you know. Obviously, if he couldn't wait more than 5 seconds, then that was not cool, but at least if we are to believe the OP's version of events, there was ample opportunity for the owner of the baby to get it out. What the ever lucking F? You're the a-hole. I am an animal scientist and a zookeeper in Australia working exclusively with natives. I mean, it means native animals. So I was like, that's a terrible, terrible expression to use. Okay. Koalas sleep so much because they eat food that gives them not a lot of energy, on par with pandas and the dumbass animals working towards their own extinction category. You're not going to wake them up with a crying baby, and if you do, they'll survive. It's not silent out bush. In fact, koalas are loud as hell when they're looking to get some. It's not on you to enforce the rules. It's also a dumb rule, but probably more for the keepers than the animals. You get really sick. You get real sick of kids screaming constantly. Interesting. But I feel that if it says quiet in a place, no matter what the reason is, then people got to be quiet in there. Right? Lol, you're the a-hole for this BS post. Every Australian will tell you that the idea that koalas need quiet is laughable. Also, if you saw an animal scurry, it wasn't a koala. Haha. Well, I think I would make the same answer. This is just about respecting a public place, like a restaurant, or something. As long as the signs are up that you should be quiet, then you should be quiet. I call BS. Koalas don't scurry. They cannot scurry. They lumber. Either you're making stuff up or the zoo doesn't actually have koalas. They have drop bears and you're all in danger. I find the story perplexing. Koalas have been kept at the San Diego Zoo for almost 100 years and they have a thriving breeding program. The exhibit is open air and not at all quiet. Yeah, I mean, this could have just been another invented story, but I think if we distill it down to the essential elements, the question was, if you are in an enclosed public space with clear instructions to be quiet and someone is not being quiet and is given the opportunity to remedy the situation, then is another person entitled to tell them to be quiet? And I think the answer is yes. Anyway, let's go on to the next one. Am I the a-hole for letting an elderly woman have my son? Am I the a-hole for not letting an elderly woman have my son's seat on the bus? All right, so my son, 17, has weekly therapy appointments that I take him to. Unfortunately, my husband let our daughter borrow his car and then had an emergency at work, so he had to use my car, so my son and I had to take the bus. It was not ideal, but I'd rather the bus than miss an appointment. While it isn't my place to share why he goes to therapy, I will say that he will often forget to eat. I usually make sure he's fed, but due to the mess in the morning, it slipped my mind. The bus wasn't too crowded, but all the seats were taken. My son wasn't doing too well, and I could tell that he was feeling dizzy from hunger plus the bus. So the second someone got off the seat, I sat him down. And then I tried to find a chocolate bar I had in my bag. While this was happening, I noticed an elderly woman and her adult daughter standing beside us. I didn't pay much attention until the daughter tapped me on the shoulder. She asked if my son could move so that her elderly mother could have a seat. I felt really bad. I really did, but my son was not doing great, and standing up would make it harder. I had found the chocolate, and he was eating it slowly, but if he stood up right there, I can assure you he would have fainted. I apologized to her and explained that my son wasn't feeling well. She rolled her eyes at me and said that she saw him standing earlier and that he's a young, healthy teenager boy. He'll be fine. I apologized once again and told her that he wasn't feeling well and that if he was, then he himself would have offered her a seat. The daughter told me to look at her mother, and I admit the poor woman looked really tired. But I couldn't. My son had started to lean against me, so I told the woman one last time that I was so sorry and to ask someone else. I then heard them both whispering and calling me an entitled biatch. And when we got off the bus, a woman that got off with us said that a teenage boy can handle standing more than an elderly woman can, and that she hopes someone treats me like that when I'm her age. Goodness, what is wrong with people? My son was so out of it, I don't think he even noticed or cared, but I can't get this off of my mind. Am I the a-hole? A totally unrelated woman thought I was along with the two. I wasn't sitting down and did not have a seat. Well, I think it's hard to answer this without knowing what your son's condition is. If it's a serious condition, then you are entitled to have him sit down. But if it's just him not feeling like eating his breakfast or being too much of a, let's say it, too much of a brat to eat his food in the morning or something, yeah, even 17-year-olds can be brats, then you are the a-hole. So I think, at least from my perspective, it depends on what condition your son had that justifies him sitting in that seat. Because obviously, if your son had a broken leg or some visible ailment, then probably they would not have asked him to get up. My 2 cents. Not the a-hole. You handled it the same way I would have, politely explaining that your son wasn't feeling well and needed to sit. I'm sure that there were many other people they could have asked and many other people that could have offered, so I'm not sure why they felt the need to pick on you and your son. Not the a-hole. Having an invisible illness is the pits. Just for this very reason, I too get these crashes on occasion, and there's no choice to it. If I don't sit down and get something in me, a Gatorade, if nothing else, I will pass out. I've been this way my whole life, thin and chunky, and yes, I've been to billions of doctors over it, slight exaggeration. 99% of the time I manage it well, but sometimes I forget to eat or think it's been a lot less time since last eating than it has been. It sounds like someone has a similar condition to OP's son. Not the a-hole. Sorry that they were so rude to you. Often people have disabilities or illness that is not obvious from their appearance. Once you explained to them that your son had a need for the seat, they should have backed off. I totally agree. There's in no situation should you have to like explain twice that you are disabled or ill or something. And if you're in the position of forcing someone to explain, that makes you the a-hole. So yeah, it was totally their issue. Also, if the elderly woman needed a seat so bad, they could have asked basically anyone on the bus who was able-bodied, besides the driver. It doesn't make any sense that he limited their search to one person because he was a teenage boy. Not the a-hole, because reasonable people know that a disability or impairment is not always visible and not something that older people have. It sounds like you were polite to the mother and daughter and that they were unnecessarily rude. People are going to be rude and unreasonable sometimes. You don't need to justify your behavior just because someone decided to be rude. I asked for info earlier, but it was removed. Sorry, but it was answered elsewhere. Wow, I totally hallucinated the word removed. That is wild. Was every other seat taken by an elderly person? Seems ridiculous that your son had the only seat on the entire bus that could be given up. While it may not be your place to say what the issue is, or that you should have even have to defend not giving up his seat, in a situation like this, it might just save the fuss to say, sorry, we are on our way to a medical appointment and my son is not doing well. I'm sure there's someone else on the bus who's capable of standing and can give up their seat, but my son is having a medical issue right now and he cannot stand. Hell, when I was 9 months pregnant, I gave up my seat to an elderly man. I'm sure that there was someone else, but you were unfortunately stereotyped and targeted because of his age. Not the a-hole. All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for us here at Story Dude Productions. We're going to wish you a beautiful day, and we will catch you on the next episode. Goodbye.